All right, buckle up for a deep dive. This one's going to be different. We're looking at Brigitte Macron, the First Lady of France, and her public image. Usually we have tons of articles and interviews to go through. But for this deep dive, we're focusing on one single video.
Yeah, it's interesting because this deep dive isn't just about her. It's about how her image has been shaped and
Uh-huh.
challenged. And this video goes way beyond, those glossy magazines. We're getting into media manipulation here.
Yeah, exactly. Like peeling back the layers of a very carefully constructed onion.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So let's start with the official story, the one pushed by the French media. It's this whole improbable love story thing. Emmanuel Macron, a brilliant student, falls for his teacher. Brigitte Trogneux, an older woman who's also married. Then, after she gets divorced, they get married and defy all these societal norms.
And the media really went all out romanticizing it. They emphasize her beauty and charisma and kind of downplay the age gap, almost like they were making a modern day fairy tale.
It really does feel that way. I mean, we're talking magazine covers, profiles, even comparisons to Mozart. Like, where was the critical coverage back then?
Right. That's a great question. And it brings us to this journalist named Xavier Poussard. He doesn't buy the official narrative. He says there's a deliberate cover-up going on, starting with Brigitte's age.
Her age. How do you even cover up something like that?
Well, Poussard says the media always said she was 36 when they met, but she was actually 39. And Emmanuel was 15, not 17 like everyone thought. It might not seem like a big deal, but remember, the age of consent in France is 15.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that does change things, especially if you're trying to sell this whirlwind romance story to the public. I guess shaving off a few years makes it a bit easier to swallow.
Exactly. And get this, there are almost no photos of her from back then. So it's hard to tell if she really was this, captivating beauty who swept young Macron off his feet, like the media said.
So, okay, we've got this official narrative being challenged, but how does someone like Brigitte Macron manage to keep such tight control over her image?
That's where Mimi Marchand comes in. She's this powerful PR figure in France. They call her the Pope of the celebrity press. And she was hired to manage Brigitte's image.
The Pope of celebrity press doesn't sound like someone you want to mess with.
You got it. Marchand is known for playing hardball. Some even say she uses blackmail and stuff to protect her clients and control the story. Think of her like a master puppeteer, but for the French media. She ran this photo agency called Best Image. They basically had a monopoly on photos of Brigitte.
So any magazine that wanted to run a story about her, they had to go through Marchand. That's a pretty effective, kind of sneaky way to control your image.
Super effective. And it gets even crazier. Marchand wasn't working alone. She had powerful connections, especially to this billionaire, Xavier Niel.
Okay, a billionaire. Fill me in. What's his story?
Well, Niel made his money in the early internet days through, let's just say, adult entertainment. He was even arrested once for aggravated pimping. The charges were dropped, but the point is he had pull. And he was like a middleman between Marchand and the Macrons.
Wow. Billionaires, PR masterminds, a perfectly crafted public image. This is starting to feel like a political thriller or something.
Yeah.
And it feels like the plot thickens even more with Bernard Arnault, the CEO of LVMH, that luxury giant. Didn't Brigitte teach two of his children?
Yep, that's right. And later, Arnault's daughter, Delphine, became Brigitte's stylist through Louis Vuitton.
High fashion, high society. How does the stylist fit into all of this?
It gets a little symbolic here. See, the stylist, Nicolas Ghesquière, he's known for promoting transgenderism and androgyny in his fashion. He uses transgender models and really pushes those boundaries.
Wait, so the stylist for the First Lady of France actively promotes transgenderism?
That's
So, I mean, given all the questions about Brigitte, it makes you wonder if there's a message there.
It's definitely a choice that adds another layer to the story. And the Macrons knew about Ghesquière's work. It wasn't just a random pick.
Right, of course. So we have this super controlled image orchestrated by Marchand, connected to powerful people. Did this facade ever crack?
Oh, it did. And it started with a scandal involving Marchand's close friend, a billionaire named Marc Ledret de la Charrière. His son, Jeremy, was convicted, not once, but 3 times, of possessing child pornography.
Oh, wow. That's awful. How does this tie back to Brigitte Macron, though?
Well, Marchand allegedly used her connections to keep his name out of the press. But when the news finally broke, it made the Macrons look bad, so they tried to distance themselves from Marchand.
I can see why, but I have a feeling Marchand wouldn't just disappear quietly.
Yeah, you're right. It seems like she might have retaliated by leaking to the magazine Closer that Brigitte had cosmetic surgery at the American hospital in Paris, no less.
Okay, that's a bold move. But why would Brigitte be so upset about this? People get cosmetic surgery all the time.
Right, but that's what's so strange. She had this really strong reaction to the leak, almost panicked. Especially because a year earlier, another magazine reported on her procedures, and she didn't care at all. So what was different about this surgery?
There's definitely something more to it. Something about this specific surgery or the surgeon must have been like really sensitive.
Exactly. And this is where Xavier Poussard, the journalist, he starts digging deeper. Closer didn't name the surgeon, but they said he was an eminent and media-savvy plastic surgeon who loved to quote Victor Hugo. He'd say, "Woman's flesh, ideal clay." Kind of narrows it down, don't you think?
It does sound pretty unique. Was there a surgeon who fit that description?
Oh, there was, and you won't believe this. It was Dr. Patrick Bowie, a plastic surgeon at the same American hospital in Paris where Brigitte had her surgery. And guess what Dr. Bowie is famous for in France?
Now leave me hanging.
Dr. Bowie is known for his feminization surgery for transgender women. He's considered the top surgeon for those procedures in France.
Whoa. So the First Lady of France, who's already surrounded by all this mystery, has surgery with a surgeon who specializes in transgender procedures. This is getting weirder by the minute. And to add to it, Emmanuel Macron later gave Dr. Bowie the Legion of Honor, one of France's highest awards.
It does make you wonder, right? This is where those cracks in the perfect image
Yeah.
really start to show. The story that the media, with Marchand's help, built so carefully, it's starting to unravel.
I have a feeling this is just the tip of the iceberg. Stay tuned, because in part 2, we're going to talk about Candace Owens' claims that Brigitte Macron was born male. We'll dive into her sources, her demands for the Macrons to address these claims, and their responses. This is where the deep dive goes from intriguing to, well, explosive. Okay, so last time we were talking about Brigitte's surgery and the surgeon's specialty in transgender procedures. Now we're bringing in another piece of this puzzle. Candace Owens, the conservative commentator from the U.S.
Yeah, Candace Owens has come out and said that Brigitte Macron was born male and transitioned to female. It's a pretty big deal, especially with her following, and she's not afraid to, challenge narratives.
That's a serious thing to say, especially about the First Lady of France. What evidence does she even have?
Well, she hasn't revealed her sources, but she keeps pointing to the lack of pictures of Brigitte from when she was younger, calling it suspicious. It's kind of like what Xavier Poussard was saying, remember?
Right, right. So she's basically saying the lack of photos, plus the already kind of weird timeline of their relationship, means we need to look into it more.
Exactly. And Owens hasn't just made these claims, she's gone a step further. She's directly challenged the Macrons, demanding answers, and she even gave them a list of questions.
Okay, what kind of questions are we talking about here?
She's asking some pretty pointed questions like, did Brigitte Macron actually give birth to her 3 children? And she wants confirmation of Brigitte's biological sex, basically asking for proof that she was born female.
Wow, those are very direct questions to ask a first lady. You don't hear that every day. So how did the Macrons respond?
Their legal team jumped in and dismissed Owens's claims, calling them an improbable conspiracy theory. They're focusing on discrediting her sources and her methods, accusing her of spreading, misinformation and speculating recklessly.
Sounds like the classic deflect and discredit playbook. But have they actually answered the core questions about Brigitte's past?
That's the thing, they haven't. They've been loud in their denials, but they're dodging the specific questions from Owens, especially the ones about her biological sex and whether she gave birth.
So they're basically sidestepping the big accusations while attacking Owens's credibility. Feels like a pretty calculated legal move to avoid actually addressing the claims.
Yeah, it does, and Owens has called them out on it. She says they're just using legal tactics to deflect and silence anyone who disagrees. She insists her sources are solid and her demands for transparency are valid.
This is starting to feel like a he said, she said situation. Candace Owens is making these big claims, but she's not showing her cards. And the Macrons are denying everything but not answering the tough questions. It's all very murky, hard to know what to believe.
You're right. It is. This deep dive has taken us down a rabbit hole of constructed narratives, powerful people pulling strings, and accusations that go right to the heart of who Brigitte Macron is. It really makes you think about the power of the media, the difficulty of verifying information, and what happens when dissenting voices are silenced.
This has got to be one of the most confusing deep dives we've done. So many layers to the story, so many unanswered questions. What does it all mean? How do we even begin to make sense of it?
Well, that's what we'll be getting into in the final part of our deep dive. We'll break down the inconsistencies in the official story, the methods used to control information, and what these allegations could mean for how we understand truth, power, and the media.
All right, welcome back to the last part of our deep dive on Brigitte Macron. We've gone through a lot, haven't we? Media manipulation, mysterious figures, accusations. Feels like we've uncovered more questions than answers at this point.
Yeah, that's how it often goes when you start digging into these carefully constructed public images. The deeper you dig, the more you realize that things are rarely as they seem, especially when you've got powerful people involved.
Absolutely. So let's do a quick recap. We started with that official love story, the one the French media carefully presented, but then we started seeing cracks in that perfect image. Things like discrepancies with Brigitte's age, Mimi Marchand's influence, and even that unusual choice of stylist. All those things raised red flags.
Right. And then Candace Owens drops this bombshell saying Brigitte was born male and transitioned. Whether or not her sources are good, it's definitely shaken things up, and the Macrons are on the defensive.
And their response. Legal threats and denials, but no real answers to the most sensitive questions. Classic example of how the powerful try to control the story, wouldn't you say?
Totally. So what does this all mean for our listeners? Well, first of all, it shows just how much power the media has to shape what people think. The French media, with Marchand's guidance, they built this image of Brigitte that fit their story, brushing aside anything that didn't fit.
Yeah, it really makes you think twice about what you read and see, especially when it comes from sources that, have a reason to push a certain narrative.
Exactly. This whole thing also shows how important transparency and accountability are. I mean, the Macrons refusing to answer those questions directly, maybe it makes sense legally, but it just creates more suspicion and distrust.
It really makes you wonder, what other truths are out there, hidden or twisted. If they can control the story about a first lady's past so well, what else can they manipulate?
It's a good question to ask. And it highlights why independent journalism and different perspectives are so important. We need to be, actively looking for different viewpoints and questioning what we're told.
This deep dive has been a wild ride. I still don't know if we've gotten to the bottom of it all. We found this whole web of power, secrets, and unanswered questions.
And that's what's so great about these deep dives. It's not about finding all the answers. It's about getting you thinking critically and forming your own conclusions based on what we've uncovered.
So, to wrap things up, here's something to consider. If the mainstream media can be manipulated like this, what other truths are we just accepting without question? What stories are being spun around us, and who's benefiting from them? These are questions we should all be asking as we, navigate this crazy world of information and misinformation. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and until next time, stay curious.